Particles in equilibrium. So a particle is said to be in equilibrium when it is acted upon by two or more, so two or more forces and motion does not take place. So no matter what are the forces that act on the particle will not move and it will stay at rest. Now, to solve questions or problems in statics, and by statics we mean equilibrium or particles in equilibrium, so we need to follow these four steps. So the first step is we have to draw a diagram that shows clearly the forces acting on the particle. The second step is we need to resolve the forces into horizontal and vertical components. And once we do that, we have to set the sum of the components in each direction equal to 0. Why to 0? Because when the particle is at rest, then motion does not take place, and of course the speed is 0. So once we resolve the forces into vertical and horizontal components, we set the sum of the components in each direction, so in the x direction and in the y direction equal to 0, and then finally we solve the resulting equations to find the unknown forces. Now let's do an example to illustrate and explain these four steps when solving questions about particles in equilibrium. So in this example, it says the diagram shows a particle in equilibrium under the forces shown. So find the forces P and Q. So I have this particle in black and I have two forces, or actually three forces. The first force, or one of the forces, is P newtons. The second force is Q newtons, and the known force in this question is 4 newtons. So I have three forces, P, Q, and 4 newtons that act on the particle. Now, how do I know that the particle is at rest? It's very clear in the question that the particle is in equilibrium. So in equilibrium means the particle does not move and it's at rest. So whenever we have a question and the particle is at rest or in equilibrium, we need to follow the four steps that I just explained. So the first step is that we need to draw a diagram, and we have to show all the forces clearly that act on the particle, and this step is already done for us. Now the second step is that we need to resolve the forces into horizontal and vertical components, so let's do that. Now for the horizontal component, which is the x-axis, we need to resolve all the forces. Now I have the force P, and it's acting on the particle at an angle which is 30 degrees. Now when we resolve the force P horizontally, we need to apply some trigonometric rules. So when we want to resolve the force P horizontally, we say that the horizontal force that is acting on the particle is P cosine 30, and the horizontal force that acts on the particle in the opposite direction, which is this case, is 4 cosine 45. Now why cosine? Because the angle is the 30 degrees is the angle that the force P makes with the x-axis. And why cosine 45? Because the force 4 newtons makes an angle equivalent to 45 degrees with the x-axis. So in this case, we need to equate these two forces together because the particle is at rest. So 4 cosine 45 is equal to P cosine 30. Now again, why did I equate these two forces together? Because the particle is in equilibrium. So the forces acting on the particle on the right hand side is equal to all the forces acting on the particle on the left hand side. So P cosine 30 is equal to 4 cosine 45. Now what's P? We just have to divide by cosine 30 and 4 cosine 45 by cosine 30. Now P is 4 cosine 45 divided by cosine 30. Now let's calculate that. So it's cosine 45 times 4. So the answer is 3.3 newtons. So that's the magnitude of force P. Now for force on Q, again, we need to resolve all the components vertically. So vertically, I have P sine 30. So it's the force P. And I have 4 sine 45 here. Now why is it sine? Because the force P makes an angle which is, in this case, it's sine of 30. Because this angle 30 is the angle that the force P makes with the x-axis. Now to find the vertical component of force P, we have to apply the sine ratio. So it's sine 30, and for the 4 newtons force, again, it's 4 sine 45, because 45 is the angle that the force 4 newtons makes with the x-axis. Now what we're doing now is that we're finding the vertical component, which is the force that the angle, or that our force 4 newtons makes with the y-axis. So it's sine 45. Now what we have to do is that we need to sum all the forces. So in this case, the forces above is equal to all the forces below the x-axis. So all the forces on the positive y-axis is equal to all the forces on the negative y-axis. So 4 sine 45 plus P sine 30 is equal to all the forces below the x-axis or on the negative y-axis, which is only Q. So this is equal to Q. So how to find Q? We just have to add these two forces. So it's 4 sine 45, which is equal to 2.8, plus P sine 30. Now what's P? P is 3.3, so it's 3.3 sine 30. So it's 1.65, so 2.8 plus 1.65, it's 4.45 newtons.